X Express, Asian Pacific Expression.
Community and cultural coverage,
Music and calendar,
new visions and voices.
coming to you with an Asian Pacific Islander point of view.
It's time to get on board the Apex Express.
Welcome to Apex Express. I'm your host, Miko Lee, and tonight we speak with my most amazing colleague, Dr. Connie Wun. Connie has had such an interesting and powerful background. She has published many books. She has the co-founder of AAPI Women Lead. She's been featured in many shows from Democracy Now! And NPR, and she has a new podcast that's out. So I'm excited for you to hear that. The podcast is called Think Twice. And first, we're going to do an interview with Dr. Connie so you can hear about her and all of her amazing work. And then we'll hear from episode 1 of Think Twice. Welcome, Dr. Connie Wun, back to Apex Express.
I'm happy to be here. It's been a while. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me.
It has absolutely been a minute. So I'm going to ask you the question, which I've asked you before, but times change, and we're living in the upside down world. So my question is, who are your people and what legacy do you carry with you?
I always love that question. I would say my people are definitely survivors of the Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander diaspora, in particular, Black women, Indigenous women, feminists, queer, disabled communities of color. Vietnamese women in particular, freedom fighters, are also my people. And then what was the second question?
What legacy do you carry with you?
I carry the legacy of my ancestors who are freedom fighters in Vietnam, who fought against the French and the US. I carry the legacy of my family's survivors of gender-based violence, and all of my sisters and brothers and gender nonconforming survivors. And then I also carry the legacy of permanently displaced peoples. They live in my DNA, my bones.
Thank you so much for sharing. You are the founder and executive director of AAPI Women Lead, and you've been doing that for a minute. In the time of now, which is a time of incredible tumultuousness, what does it feel like to be a woman of color organization fighting against this incredible fascist regime?
Well, let me first clarify that the other co-founder is Connie Wun, who is my sister. And then I can then say that it has been both heartbreaking to be a woman of color-led organization. It's been infuriating. And then I also think it's been very grounding to be included in the women of color political identity. I think in this period, the domestic and global warfares against our communities has increased. It's exacerbated. It's gotten even more intense. And I think for me, I draw on the legacy that you asked us to name. And I would say that while the warfare against us has shifted, has expanded, it's quite new. I would say the warfare against us in particular is not new, right? The strategies are new, but the war against us is not new. And I'm grounded in that understanding. I would then say there's so many things that are happening on multiple fronts, and I don't know if you're going to ask about what that looks like. I'm determined. The other day I gave a talk and I used the word relentless. I think to be a co-founder, a guide, a descendant of freedom fighters demonstrates to me that my people are relentless. We refuse to be taken down. by empire, and we demand that we will outlive it. I mean, I keep thinking about the song that I was playing most recently actually is a really famous song. It's called Langmea, and Langmea is about like your mother's like it's not even the word like love. It's like beyond her love. It's her want for you, right? Like a mother's want. And that song has also been sang by like revolutionary singers. It's contemporary, and I think there's that gets to it. It's like want of the mother, right? Like that, I feel like for me as a maternal matriarch who doesn't have children, but as a matriarch, there's a want for the world.
It's the caretaker mama bear instinct.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think. And it's a very deep-seated for us, like the mother's love, the maternal love, the matriarch's love. It nourishes and it also ends up sacrificing quite a bit. And that's one of the things that I've been weary of is the demand for the figure of the woman to sacrifice. That's also the reason I'm pausing when I am answering your question, because I also don't want to romanticize these things, namely because it's often at the sacrifice of the woman. And while we value her and while we herald her, I also am concerned about how much she has to sacrifice in order to be that figure. So, going back to your question, what does it mean to be a woman of color, leader of sorts in this moment? I'm being very careful that women like me are not going to be sacrificed as we have historically been.
You make me think of the OG book, This Bridge Called My Back. And so many of our movement leaders, I was just teaching this ethnic studies class a couple of weekends ago. And as I was teaching, I was showing the different movement leaders. And at one point, one of the young people said, it seems like all the people that you're showing are women. And they like pause. And I said, yes, and? And I said, like, who usually tells the story? What's the story usually about? But when we really think about so many of our movement leaders that haven't been necessarily highlighted have been women of color.
Mhm. And I think to that point, and even to the students' speculation, right? I think it's gendered and a part of the patriarchal violence against us that our stories are rendered invisible, even if we are consistently on the front lines and behind lines. Like we're on all levels of the domestic global warfare. And that labor is unseen. And sometimes it's definitely okay for it to be unseen, but it's neglected. It's rendered negligible, right? And that's a part of the violence that I'm hoping April Lee's work, including Think Twice Media, will help to dismantle.
Ooh, so let's talk about that. You have a new podcast called Think Twice. First, what inspired the title, and then what inspired the podcast?
Thank you for that question. And Think Twice was actually inspired by the other co-founder, Jenny Wun. And the concept behind it is that people haven't necessarily considered to think twice about many things that are going on, especially here in the United States. In fact, in the age of the digital world and social media, people are inundated with so much information and very limited access to critical literacy and or their own abilities to critically think and dissect and think differently from what is being kind of shouted out at us, right? So Think Twice Media is to say, hold up, guys, think twice about what it is that you're watching and seeing. And that was the reason behind it. And then the impetus behind why we even created the podcast is because AA Prime Lead has been, since its beginning, been very big on storytelling, right? We've had multiple platforms, we've created multiple platforms for our communities to tell their stories. We have a community-driven research project where survivors have told their stories around what it means to be survivors of violence in the United States and in its territories. We've hosted so many events. We have a social media platform that has 150,000 followers. And we thought that the natural extension was to do a podcast. And we also wanted to challenge the short form ways of learning, right? Like people are now only thinking in like sound bites. So we wanted to make sure that people engaged in long form with us. So make the podcast a little bit longer and stay engaged with us. Learn more and hear more. And that is going to coincide with a book that we're going to be publishing. We're hoping that people will both think twice and then think with us for a longer period of time.
Ooh, tell me a little bit more about this book. What is it? What's the topic? What's the timeline?
So there's actually two things that are happening. One is that I'm in the middle of writing my own memoir, right, about what it means to be a Vietnamese survivor at the hands of empire and then also at home. And then the other book that we're working on is an anthology that shares the stories of, again, Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander women, girls, queer, gender nonconforming survivors. We have been collecting our community stories. We're expanding our number of contributors to the anthology. We intend to probably go to press by 2027. It takes a little bit longer, but I do believe we'll hear more of our community stories in long form soon.
Thank you for that sneak peek. Looking forward to learning more about that. What would you like your audiences to understand after listening to your podcast?
I would like for our listeners to understand that Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities are telling our stories everywhere and that they have critical insights everywhere. So the guests that you will see will include people who are in the arts and culture spaces, who are writers, who are actors, who are other types of creatives, poets. And then you will also be engaging and learning from people who are organizers, who are also in the beauty industry, who are different types of leaders in their fields, right? We want to be able to present to you all and have you engage and learn from our Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders who are everywhere. And they have insights about everything, right? We want you to be able to learn from them and engage with them. And then we have also invited some of our co-conspirators and our allies, right? The first episode is with the very renowned poet, Teresa Siagatonu. And then there's also Amanda Seals, who's on our second episode of the first season. And I think that's pretty exciting to hear all of their stories. This first season is hosted by me, and you will hear stories from Teresa, who will talk about the relationship between Pacific Islanders and Asian communities. She will also be talking about colonialism and its relationship to all of our communities, but in particular for Pacific Islanders. She also talks about the impact of militarization. Then you'll also hear Amanda Seals talk about what it means to be a Black radical feminist creative storyteller and her experience, as well as being a survivor. You'll also hear from Anna Cho Fenley, who talks about being a Korean adoptee and what that has meant, being a survivor in her own work in the anti-violence world. You'll also hear from Leo Sheng, who is the first Chinese trans actor on the L Word, right? So we have so many amazing people. I would want your listeners to know that our people are everywhere and they have such powerful stories to tell,
Thank you so much for finding a place to amplify those powerful stories.
right?
I also loved hearing Teresa's family connection to the AAPI naming. I
Yes.
didn't know that. I've known Teresa, but I didn't know that story. It's like, oh, wow, I love that.
People have loved that episode. And in fact, professors have reached out to me to say that they are about to teach her work because our episode and our podcast, including her interview, helps to distill what they've been trying to teach.
Yep. And then
And
she pulls in our historical amazing fighters like Haunani Trask and other folks. So it's really important for folks that want to understand more about a Kanaka experience.
And in ways that are so digestible,
Hmm.
right? Because it's like dense theory across so many populations, multiple theories she helps you to understand.
What I kept thinking as I was listening to her is, girl is a writer. I mean, we know that she's such a beautiful poet, but she speaks in such an eloquent way.
For me, as an educator, she does it in a way where everyone is compelled and forced to kind of pay attention.
Yeah.
As someone who's left academia, part of me is like, these academics have nothing on her.
I mean,
And
we
that
all have different ways of learning, and we need as many
true.
people out there as possible. And I think you having this new show to platform different voices is really crucial. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for paying attention and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. And luckily, our audience gets a sneak peek and gets to listen in to the first episode as well. I'm wondering if you could share with our audience how they could find out more about you and your work.
Well, you all can visit our website at www.aapiwl.org. And of course, we are across a number of social media platforms at AAPI Women Lead. And then you can definitely find us on all of the podcast platforms. And you would find us through Think Twice Media podcast series.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today, Dr. Connie.
Thank you.
And now, let's listen to Think Twice, the podcast by Dr. Connie Wun. This is episode 1.
Welcome, Teresa. Welcome, friends, to Think Twice with Dr. Connie Wun and the AAP Women Lead team, where we think twice about cultural narratives and invite people to share their experiences to amplify the importance of nuance, critical thinking, and authentic storytelling. The Think Twice podcast is a podcast produced by AAPI Women Lead. So, as we get ready, I invite people who are joining us to get cozy, to grab some water, some tea, ease into their body, wherever they may be. And I am Dr. Connie Wun from the AAPI Women Lead team, and we are so excited to have our very good friend, Teresa Siagatano. Welcome, welcome. And just to tell everyone
Yeah.
who is tuning in, who's watching us, I know Teresa as a fangirl. So I told her for a few years, I have been following her work, her poetry, her artistry, her writing. And then we were humbled to invite her to one of our conferences, our first conference.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
she was so patient with us when we had no idea what we were doing. And so since then, she's been a part of many of our events, has honored us and graced us with her presence. And so I thank you, Teresa, for sharing your time, your talents, and your brilliant wisdom with us. So thank you. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you. I'm so excited to be here. Yes. Thank
We're
you
so
for having me.
Yeah, we're so lucky. A bit about Teresa. She is an award-winning touring poet, a speaker, an educator, and a community organizer who was born and rooted in unceded Ohlone territory in the Bay Area. Her voice in the poetry world as a queer Samoan artist has granted her opportunities to perform in places such as the UN Conference on Climate Change in Paris, the ninth annual Asia Pacific Triennial in Brisbane, Australia, and the 2019 SF Women's March. Teresa's writing and teaching blends the personal, cultural, and political in a way that calls for healing, courage, justice, and truth. A 2023 Emerson Collective Fellow, yay, her work has been published in Poetry Magazine and the Academy of American Poets and has been featured on Button Poetry, CNN, NBC News, NPR, KQED, Huffington Post, Everyday Feminism, The Guardian, and more. Okay? And offstage, Teresa's a community organizer and creates and facilitates workshops. She leads artistic and professional development training, provides mental health support, and delivers keynote speeches across the country on issues that inform her 15 plus years of community work. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Teresa. for joining us. Thank you. Thank you.
Yay, such an honor. Truly, truly happy to be here. And there's not much I wouldn't do for AAPI Women Lead. So to even have the invitation to be on the podcast had me super hyped. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know we start off this podcast with what people call like hot takes, but what we instead call what the okay?
Yeah.
It's very bae of us
Uh-huh.
to say what in the actual. So I have a question for you because you are a veteran organizer and a well-known community advocate, educator who's been in this work for a very long time. And you also have a huge presence on social media. One of the things that I've admired about you is not only just your presence, but your integrity.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Very principled. I have a question about how the social media world has also granted access to people and also solicited people to act in ways that are just questionable.
Yep. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
No, just
Uh-huh.
questionable, especially in the world of what we call social justice.
Yeah.
So my question, Teresa, as someone who has actual like feet on the ground and biting all this game, what do you think about all these people who are branding themselves as social justice anything? Like that's their brand, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. I think so much of my work ruminates over this often because as a poet, as an artist, I deal so much in the business of language and of how to language and how to create narratives, but also shift narratives and understand the narratives around us that help us make sense of the world around us. And so much of what I see off top when it comes to people branding themselves as social justice activists or social justice warriors or whatnot, I always question first their principles and what they're aligned with in terms of their values. I often question who their mentors are because these are all questions that are rooted in how I came up in activism first when I was an undergrad at UC Santa Cruz. But over time, it became clear that the most important core parts of my organizing work was because I never did it alone. I was always in a community of folks who were guiding me through the work. And I was always mentored into helping shape what my values would be and what my values are today, right? And so I'm always wondering, like, who is leading you? Who is checking in with you? Who are you accountable to, right? And oftentimes what I notice is when I see folks whose brand is very much this social justice bend, I tend to see and realize quickly that a lot of them are not connected to a broader organization or people call a political home, or just like a body of people that they come back to and are a collective with. They don't make clear who their mentors are. They don't make clear how they study and how they learn and know what they know. I think, and I say study not in just the book sense. Like I don't believe you have to just be reading books only in order to gain knowledge, in order to sharpen your political consciousness. But it's more so, how do you know what you know? What are you consuming? How are you spending your time? What, right? And to who do you owe your knowledge to? Who are you indebted to, right? I make clear of who those people are in my life in terms of mentorships, scholars, activists, thinkers, organizers, who I attribute to greatly every time I'm in the world moving about the work. And my ears perk up when I don't see folks doing that in their work, and when they champion their work as being the sole person who's holding it all, or when they don't help connect folks back into how to also get involved or how to also stay informed in those ways. And also when I just see hot takes in like 2 cents, right? Like just like little sound bites, right? Even in my own work, I will say, like, I'm not naive to the fact that part of my social media following got so big at the height of summer 2020, in the heart and at the core of police brutality against Black folks in our communities, that ushered in so many followers, primarily white folks, and folks who were just not connected to any organizing movement, who were just trying to learn. I feel like you all, AAPI Women Lead, I saw it too, that y'all probably also took in an influx of followers, of people who wanted to know more how to stay connected, especially as summer 2020 was juxtaposed with the incessant violence towards Asian folks, right? Like all these people just kept flooding into I know my ecosystem of work that like my followings kept going up by the thousands every day. And I was not naive to that. But also I felt like this balance of needing to like really make clear that this is not a fan base place. Like if you're looking to like, to find like a leader to follow, like it may not be me, but I can be a resource. And that was how I was using my platform in those earlier years of the pandemic. And then I had to readjust and assess my relationship to social media because I was finding myself becoming a hub in which people only came to me for all of their news and all of their information and all of their instructions of how to go about this work. And I was like, I just felt like that was not what I wanted to be either. Where I was trying to make clear, you have to cast a wider net to stay genuinely connected to many people doing many things all at once, because that's also the nature of my own personal work offline. And so I found myself posting differently. I found myself not using my space to only be a place of call to actions and whatnot, like, and to actually do a lot of offline mentorship is what I started venturing into in the midst of the pandemic as well. That I'm sure y'all know too, that like not all of your work can exist online, but I won't shortchange how vital of a tool social media can be when it comes to shifting a narrative, holding a narrative to help clarify for people what the issues are and how we can move about it. I'll pause there. I know I said a lot because I have so many feelings about it when I see these things, when it comes to folks championing themselves as social justice people online, right? And that being their brand. And also I think the last thing I'll say is when you start monetizing the social justice part of your work, like, I think that gets tricky, right? Because in one sense, I'm in support of like freelance artists, for instance, getting paid for the work that they produce and they cultivate and whatnot. But it's also like a matter of like, how then do we make sure our communities are still being resourced by the work that you're putting out? Because again, like I'm also an artist who is not always putting forth original ideas. Like I'm an artist that's greatly directed by or taught by first queer Black poets and revolutionaries, who I always attribute to June Jordan, Audre Lorde, Nikki Giovanni. And then there's Pacific leaders who like Haunani K. Trask, Teresia Tewa, like who I make clear, like these are my navigators to which I understand the world. And so what does that mean in terms of how I move when I'm being resourced for how I think and I'm being paid for speaking, right? And so, yeah, and I think those are all self-reflective questions that we ask ourselves if we're truly genuinely committed to what we say is social justice, right?
I like all these things that you're naming. I especially love you talking about the ways that we are students of longer generations of movement leaders and writers and thinkers and scholars and organizers and poets and more, right? So I appreciate you naming that. And I think, we're not going to hate on people for needing to pay the bills.
No.
And then we also have questions about how you monetize suffering so that you could pay the
Yes.
bills. You know what I mean? Like part of that, I'm just like, yo, I like how you're about to get a gig on this. Like, I'm just like,
it's true. And I see it. I see it. And it's hard to not like critique and not look at it like, really? Like, what was your bottom line and how come it wasn't this gig? Like,
ma'am, I mean, if we get to talk about this in a second, I'm like, people have like an abyss for bottom lines. It's like, is that an ever going forever well? Like y'all don't have boundaries? I don't understand.
I know. I'm like, is that the stage of late stage capitalism we're at? We're just like taking every and all gigs and surviving by any means. And it's just like, yikes. I can't, I got to believe that there's more to that, right? Like there's got to be other ways, because that's not that then becomes not okay, because there's so many implications to when you take on gigs without questioning them and being critical, like
that's the truth.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you kind of delving into the what, like get our brains going, our spirits going, our souls questioning things. And then we're going to do a little bit more soul searching. when I asked the question, you gracefully and kindly joined AAPI Women Leads events and also today's podcast. And I know that we have had several conversations around what an actual is AAPI, what is ANHPI, what is API, what is all these things. So I'd love to hear your thoughts because I know you have a pretty solid history in that term. Could you tell us what is your history and your relationship to the term API as in Asian Pacific Islander? And then why is it, a challenging umbrella term? And then what are your thoughts around it for anything really?
Sure. I'd love to delve into this. I will start with saying that my grandfather, High Chief Leliso Fuala Tualasi Leatatufu, was actually on the committee that coined the term Asian Pacific Islander for the US Census Bureau in 1978. I once found a photo of him in that committee, and he is one of, I think, two Pacific Islanders in the photo. Yes, thanks, Papa. But yeah, I looked at that photo and he's one of two Pacific Islanders, I believe only two Pacific Islanders on that committee. And so that's where I will say that's where the genealogy of my relationship to AA and HPI began. It was through him and his work, because when he was alive, he was an avid community voice and leader and activist in his own right, primarily for the Samoan community, but broadly the Pacific Islander community, both statewide, nationwide, and in the Pacific. Just a very vocal, unorthodox man who oftentimes people found intimidating because he was so stern and so principled by what he believed, but also just deeply cared about the furtherance of our people and our culture and the preservation of it. And so he was also the first writer I knew and loved. And so my whole childhood was spent watching him write book after book and self-published book after book about the genealogy of our Samoan people. And so just being his grandchild and living in his legacy is what also galvanized me to also get involved in the AAPI organizing world. I started off in UC Santa Cruz when I was an undergrad, and I haven't stopped since. And so even after college, I've always been heavily involved in the PI part, specifically in terms of getting more PI folks involved in our organizing work as a community. But also understanding for myself, like, what does that mean to be Pacific Islander within the Asian American Pacific Islander context, in which, it's not new to anyone, I hope, that oftentimes in the AA and HPI community, Pacific Islanders are oftentimes marginalized and whatnot. And so there's so much to be said about that. I don't want to focus too much about that part, but I'm contextualizing this to say that the state of AA and HPI right now, as we speak, we're in a really peculiar place that is both illuminating. For me, it's illuminating just how far we've come from where our ancestors and where our elders first began our joint organizing within our AA and HPI community. And also it excites me to see what possibilities we have in front of us of what more we can be and how we can transcend to be more as AA and HPI people, how we can actually really garner the political power that exists between us and within us to really do some because, I'm 37 and I've been doing this work for over half my life. And I'm at a place where I'm also antsy to push us more creatively as an artist, but also like get real clear with our folks of like, what is it that we want? Like, what is it that we want more of? Because as it stands, at least in the Pacific Islander community, a lot of my people have really fraught relationships with the AA and HPI label, but part of their feelings are righteous in that. But I oftentimes feel that their feelings are unrooted in the history of AA and HPI, that they don't know that a bunch of our elders came together at the height of the civil rights movement in amidst the Black Power movement that created the Asian American movement, amidst the anti-war movement. Like AA and HPI was created during a really political time in which I believe our elders were really smart and strategic at the time to try to figure out how do we resource our people through the Census Bureau first, but also how do we also join all these student movements who were also fighting for ethnic studies. Like, there were so many things that were happening that now, as it stands in 2025, when I hear my PI mentees and young folks, complain or have really big feelings about, well, why are we still joined with Asian folks? And why don't we do our own thing? Like, they are not able to trace the genealogy of that history to understand and contextualize, like, okay, it had to be that way to begin with, and it's been that way for years, and these are all the reasons why, so that they could then ask themselves, well, okay, instead of just vocalizing our critiques of it, what can we contribute to it? Where else, where do we fit in, you know? And that's the movement I don't see happening with the same fervor as I see the critiques coming in at, right? And I'm at a place where I get nervous about how I hear the narrative of people's righteous frustrations with our community. And specifically, I think it just keeps falling flat at the naming. People have a problem with the name. It's like, to be honest, Connie, like I'm at a place where I'm like, they could call us whatever they want, as long as we're all coming for US imperialism together. You can call me whatever the hell you want. I am looking at the Department of Defense and the Pentagon alongside comrades who are also very clear about why our communities are also joined, that we're not just joined out of sake of representation, we're not just joined out of sake of shared culture. We're joined because being cultural people is also a political act, right? As Auntie Honani K. Trust does. Like, that's what I want to be focused on. Like, I ache for the day where we can get clear on whatever they call us, according to the state. What we know, to be clear, is that the military has to get out of Okinawa. The military has to get out of the Pacific. You know what I mean? Like, no more war, right? Like, there's so much more we could be coming together on. And I look at my people with so much love, and I'm like, come on, y'all. I know I was all over the place in my answer there, but those are my general feelings, because I've been doing this work in our community for so long, and because I love the hell out of us, that, you know, I often say I'm at an impasse about separating us, because politically speaking, strategically speaking, we are quite strong together in terms of the resources we get as a community, especially in the wake of this administration. Like, in the wake of this administration, AANHPI is a power for our community that we can leverage for more for our people. And I've seen it done, and I see parallel pathways in which PI folks and Asian folks are working alongside each other to help garner the funding and the resources necessary for our people, where it doesn't have to be this moment of like tension all the time, because I know we need each other. And I know that the future we make it to will absolve AAPI-ness into something more. I don't know what that more is. I think we have to figure that out together. I don't think it'll exist in the same way that it existed when it was once created, but we have to be around to do that work. And it's the unsexy, unpopular work that people don't want to do, but we have to do it, right? And I want to do it with us, rather than just critique why it exists, right? So.
Thank you for that. And then, you know, to be fair, the onus of questioning and criticizing ANHPI, API cannot fall solely on our Pacifica communities or our Native Hawaiian communities, right? So as you talk and name the lineage, which I absolutely honor and, you know, thank your ancestor for joining us actually today, I do want to say that there is not enough criticism and perhaps responsibility and accountability on the parts of the AA or the A in the ANHPI, right? So
Yeah.
I think even for AAPI Women Lead, and just to be clear, AAPI stands for Asian and Pacific Islander, not Asian American Pacific Islander. I think, you know, we trouble what it means to be Asian as well, right? Because we also know it to be a state construct.
Yeah.
And so I think I absolutely agree with you in the sense of what is this political identity? Not necessarily solely a cultural identity, but a politics as a part of our culture,
Yep.
and one that is anti-imperialist, that is pro-Black. You know,
Yeah.
you've named that lineage. To be anti-imperialist is also to be in an ideal political world pro-Black.
Yeah.
Right. So I appreciate you naming this. And then I love you talking about the tensions and the hope for something else by which this umbrella term is not imposed upon us either.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thank you for that, because sometimes I'm out here. I do honor, I absolutely honor, like you said, the righteous critique. I'm here for it. And that's actually why.
Same.
It's actually why we named ourselves Asian and Pacific Islander, right? It was like,
Yeah.
just to get, I don't know if you know that history, but when we decided to be Asian and Pacific Islander Women Lead, I had been invited to so many places that was API, like I would be the API rep, right? And
Yeah.
these would be funding places. And I'm like, there's no PI. So y'all are making me the rep. And so if I'm going to do this, I'm going to take that API and I'm going to go in these spaces and I'm going to say you have no PI and I'm not her. So
Yeah.
I'm going to take that identity marker and I'm going to come in and I'm going to say you don't PIs are not A.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think in some spaces it's actually been quite helpful. And that isn't to say anything about me, but I know it was a political decision, right?
Yeah. And that's the AAPI work I want to be doing with folks. Like that's the comrade relationship we all should want. We all should strive to want that. And for me, that is a marker of trust that there are Asian comrades who I trust with my people to have our back without me having to be in the room. And we need that level of scrutiny and clarity and connectedness because that's how we share the labor, right? like I trust you. There are a few other Asian comrades that I also trust. I'm like, no, they got it. We don't have to be there, and that's been built over years of organizing together. And it's not always, like smooth